I'm Kristen Jones, a peak performance and sports parenting coach, author of Raising Empowered Athletes: How Can We Raise Healthy, Brave, and Resilient Kids, and the host of the Raising Athletes podcast, where for the last now 8 years, 7, 8 years, I've been talking about how do we give our kids and ourselves the tools that we need to be healthy, happy, not risk averse, but taking good risks and getting what we want in life. It's January, it's cold in most of the United States. We're all hunkering down and trying to figure out how we want 2020 to play out. We got through 25 with or mostly with our plugging our nose with a lot of stuff that's going on in the world. But I love setting the year up with setting goals and looking at what are the things that I want to do differently and bigger this year. So I've got two guests on today that we're going to talk about, you know, everything from, how do we support goals to how do we look at supporting female athletes and female growth beyond just the floor pool, but into the boardroom too. So maybe I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Camilla, would you start?
Yeah, sure. My name is Camilla Hill, and I am a former athlete, former field hockey player at the College of William and Mary, and I also coached for a few years at William and Mary, and then since then I have been working in people and culture, doing culture work in organizations and in higher education. I have recently started my own consulting firm where I do people and culture work. And I also work with athletes. And I do a lot of team building, trust, psychological safety, working on helping athletes and their coaches and teams and athletic departments develop atmospheres where high performance can really be a place where folks can succeed. And that is grounded in a lot of the same principles as high functioning teams in organizations and in large corporations, I've realized. So I bring a lot of my background in athletics and my background specifically as a female and athlete and a women's coach. And I realized that promoting female athletics and specifically working with female athletes is something that's really passionate, a really big passion of mine. So that's been really fun with my organization. Yeah, so it's been really fun. Elspeth, I'll toss to you.
Yeah, so I'm Elsbeth Bierman, also a former college athlete. I actually don't wear this hoodie a lot, but I happen to be sporting my alma mater right now, the University of Bridgeport, or at least one of them, where I went for undergrad. And I played basketball there, and I've coached basketball pretty much since I've graduated. And I got my degree in occupational therapy. And while I was in grad school, I did a lot of work on athletes, specifically transitioning athletes and really into and out of their sport, mostly focused on out of their sport. And right now I'm the director of player development at Shenandoah University, which is a small Division III school out in Winchester, Virginia. And I work with the female basketball athletes there a lot, one-on-one individually on topics like confidence, leadership, self-leadership, really anything that's getting in their way of performing the way that they want to perform, whether that's on the court or in the classroom. Um, yeah, I also work with other female athletes outside of I would say mostly high school athletes, working on a lot of those same skills, just trying to get these female athletes to the place where they can feel confident in themselves, confident in the way that they're performing on the court. And yeah, Camilla, when you talked a lot about the psychological safety, I mean, that's like the first thing that comes to mind whenever I think of working with any of these athletes. So yeah, I'm excited to get into this conversation. Um, I know I'm with two women who have a breadth of knowledge about areas that I'm not as familiar with as well. So I'm excited to get into it.
Great. Well, thank you both for being here. And three former athletes who I think once you're an athlete, you're always an athlete. And I still think of myself, I just had my 56th birthday, but I am still an athlete. I may not be competing on the court, but I'm competing at life and wanting to do it better. I love the term psychological safety. So maybe let's start there. Like, because when you come to when you grow up in a sport, I feel like things have changed where we just, at least in my generation, we just played, and like we didn't have a sports psychologist on staff. I went and sat on your mom's couch, right? And when I had a problem, I played for Camilla's mom. One of her moms at William and Mary was this amazing coach who wore multiple hats. And I
Mhm.
feel like for sure, I'm dating myself 35 years ago. Um, there weren't the resources to do that. What we
Yeah.
now know is that we're not just an athlete when we're on the floor, but
Absolutely.
we take it with us, and we take it with us out of, past it. I used it my 15-year career at Nike a lot in the boardroom. What I saw were the people that kind of did the best in the corporate environment. Most of them were athletes that they understood how to. My husband and I talk about this a lot with our kids, but how to have an athletic response. An
Mhm.
athletic response is not hysteria and crying and this isn't going my way, but okay, I'm not getting what I want. But
Mhm.
maybe, Camilla, could you speak a little bit about, and then Elsbeth too, your point of view on psychological safety, and what does that mean when you work with athletes and or clients?
Yeah, I think that that's really important because I think, well, one thing I think that you bring up is the difference in responses, and how particularly women's athletics has changed over the time. So we see that with the exposure, which has been lovely and wonderful, right? So we see that there has been an explosion in support for women's athletics, which is amazing, right? But with that, there has also been an explosion in some of the more heightened pressure for women, right? So, with that, there has been a higher level of pressure associated with women's athletics that there hasn't actually seen before. Um, and so I think that some of that also is before, folks other than on the teams themselves, there was this really there was a huge drive in that, but there wasn't the media pressure, there wasn't a lot of times a truth outside in the athletics department. There weren't brand deals, there weren't all these other external pressures, particularly for collegiate athletes. And then there weren't middle schoolers trying to get college scholarships. And so I think that there has been a progression in pressure associated with women's athletics. And so, what do we do to counteract that? It's this development of resiliency that we need to foster in women, particularly in women, because society as a whole is telling women you're weak. You're not, you're not as good. You're not supposed to be resilient. You just give up, those kinds of things. And so, how are we, particularly from young age, girls and women, how are we developing these resiliencies and these skills? We've seen that in the business world, women who have a background in athletics, in any sort of competitive athletics, they are actually more likely to be successful. They're more likely to be CEOs. They're more likely to be COOs. They are more likely to be higher achieving, right? And what is that from? That's because they're developing these skills of resilience. So how do athletic teams develop psychological safety? I think part of it is developing these support mechanisms, but also it's developing things like, you know, you make mistakes. How do you learn from them? How do you develop resiliency? How do you get back up when you fall? How do you learn from your mistakes rather than be defeated by them?
Yeah, and Camilla, I love that answer, and I love how you took it from a societal standpoint as well, not just like in a very specific team. And a question that I get sometimes, and I had a conversation with two parents this morning about their daughter who's struggling and having a really hard time. And one thing they said was that they were happy that this was happening now because they knew that it would benefit her long term. So I think something really important for parents, coaches, even players to understand that I think we forget sometimes is in order to build resilience, that means you have to go through something hard. Like something difficult has to happen in order for you to build that skill. So it kind of sucks, right? Like it sucks to go through that, but you get on the other side and you think that's where a little bit of confidence comes from too. It's like, wow, I did that thing. Like I can do hard things, I can do more things. But another question I get sometimes from coaches is like, how do they know? What are indicators of a psychological safe environment?
Mhm.
Because sometimes they don't even know what they're looking for. And when I think of psychological safety and I think of, okay, what does that environment look like? How do I know? It's generally it's like more relaxed. Like I just think of like a weight being kind of lifted off of my shoulders. Like I'm just a little bit more relaxed and athletes are speaking up. Like they're not afraid to speak, they're not afraid to do things. And sometimes that fear comes with I don't know if I'm going to say the right thing, I don't know if I'm going to mess up. So like if you can notice some of that fear taken away, that is sometimes a good indicator that oh, my players feel safe. They feel like they can be themselves, they feel like they can speak up. And that's really the building blocks for improvement on the court as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elsbeth, you talk about the safety, and that's such a there's a fine line though, right? Between we want to be pushed, and as a coach, you need to hold players accountable. So how do you do that without and then yet on the other side, like you said, and this then translates to corporate as well. Like people stop a- asking questions if they feel like they're going to be punished or they're going to be, you know, held back. They just stop, giving it their all. So how do you set a culture that allows for them to feel heard and seen?
Yeah, that's excellent question because like two things can be true at one time, right? And I think sometimes when I talk to parents or coaches, they think, "Oh, like you think this is going to be rainbows and butterflies and like everybody's going to be happy and we're all going to be skipping around holding hands." And it's like, "No, that's not what it is." And I would love both of yours opinion on what I'm about to say too because I'm a big believer in you can say anything you want to somebody. You really can, as long as the intensity of what you're saying is matched by how much they perceive that you care for them.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what it is. It's like if I build a psychologically safe environment, if my players know, if my athletes know that I really care about them, it really enhances the way that I can check them. Like I can hold them accountable because they know where it's coming from. And I think that's a lot of the times athletes get confused and they don't know where things are coming from. And it's yeah, it's just like not consistent maybe. Like the feedback isn't consistent or the relationship isn't consistent. The relationship I mean by that is, oh, you only pay attention to me when I do well, or you only talk to me if I perform well. Whereas if that relationship is consistent and they know they're getting from that, you really can kind of up the ante on what you can hold athletes accountable for. But yeah, I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, and I think that part of being a part of a team is obviously demonstrating care for one another. And I think the huge part of psychological safety is being able to raise our hand and say, I think that there's a problem here, right? So uh, one of Google did this research project that was called the Aristotle Project. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it was they did this and they had this theory that like they were going to take all of their high performers and put them on one team, and then they were like, this is going to be our best team, right? Because they're our highest performers. And they found out that actually their highest performers didn't make the best team. Their their best team actually was distinguished by having the most psychologically safe team, and they drilled it down and figured out what was it that they felt made them the most safe, and it was that they felt the confidence to take risks and to hold each other accountable. And what they learned there was that if you feel safe enough to say, you know what, I'm going to try something. And if it doesn't work, my teammates are going to tell me, hey, that didn't work. That was a dumb idea, but we're going to work with it together. Right. Um, and my teammates are going to have my back. Um, that did much better than the team who were like, these are our rock stars, right? And so frequently, we've all seen it, right? We've seen the team of rock stars who fall flat on their faces playing against the team of just kind of role players, because the team of role players are like, I'm going to take risks. I'm going to just focus on my passing. I'm going to focus on, whatever it is that these are my roles, and I'm going to do those really, really well. Right. And so that is directly translatable in whatever environment you're in. Psychological safety is, I'm going to trust my teammates. I'm going to know that I can take risks. I'm going to know that I can fail, and it's not going to negatively detriment, everybody. And I'm going to be safe to do that. And then when I fail, we're going to figure it out together.
And on the flip side of that, or the other half of that, is the leadership style that's being implemented. I watched a basketball game over the weekend where the team was down by 20 points, and the coach insisted on basketball, full court pressing all the way down to the last 5 seconds. He's yelling, you can hear him, and I'm watching it on Zoom. You can hear him loudly articulating his dispassionate for his players, screaming at them at every timeout. You're down 20 and there's less than a minute to go. You're not going to win. So there's a point of, but what are those players seeing? There's one thing to say, okay, you're going to be held accountable to try to work hard to, and then finally, even by the end, the announcers are like, okay, I think he's like kind of proved his point that he doesn't want to give up. Okay, there's the difference between giving up and
Right.
there's another, just humiliating your athletes, because what you're saying is what you did is not good enough, and getting in the player's face, right? So if, to your psychological safety point, if I feel like I'm just going to be humiliated to the point of like, why would I even try? Right.
Yeah.
I now know don't want to go. And then on the flip side, a coach that can just be even, whether we're winning by 20 or losing by 20, doesn't mean you don't care. It means, here's my standard, here's my bar, here's what I'm asking you to do. And I never forget, there was last year, my son's team lost by 25. And I said, gosh, what did the coach say to you after? And he said, I'm not upset, just disappointed that you decided not to compete today. That would be like, oh, I'm going to go run lines for 20 days. Right? Like, I mean, and then that's parenting too, right? Like,
Yeah.
you could have the parent that's screaming and yelling at their kid in the middle of the department store, or you have the parent that says, wow, I hold you to a higher standard. I know you can behave better than that. How do you think you should behave?
Yeah.
Ooh, now I need to take ownership of how I'm behaving.
Mhm.
Different
Yeah.
outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think, all of those things are, it's holding ourselves accountable, holding each other accountable, I mean, going to parenting, we talk a lot. I've got a 4-year-old and a now newly 7-year-old. And so we're talking a lot about community and how, we're all a part of this community. We all contribute to this community, but like that all is, it's a team effort here. So, you have to empty out the trash can in your side of the minivan, and that's a part of the team effort. And it might not be fun, but that's a part of the team effort, and we're all contributing here, And so I think that it's all building on that team strengthening aspect of, absolutely, you have to hold each other accountable and help each other when maybe we're falling short, help each other, remind each other what accountability looks like.
Elspeth, what are you seeing with young athletes right now that you're working with, as far as, do they have the tools they need to be self-sufficient in college? Or you just mentioned a story where you're talking to the parents. Like, are you still dealing with the parents a lot, or are they're able to self-soothe, they're able to go for help, they're able to advocate for themselves, they have agency?
Yes. Well, the conversation I had this morning, it was about their daughter. It was kind of a different situation where I was meeting them first, and then I was gonna. So I don't usually work exclusively with parents, but I have talked to them in the past. And with the college athletes, I could really only speak to the ones that I work with. So it's a very small case study of like what might be happening on a broader scale. But Well, actually, I talked to a friend who is a professor at the university as well, and she was expressing, so this is not just athletes, but students in general, but she was expressing how she just feels like the skills are lacking a little bit with some of the students that she's seeing, from the angle of um, even just problem solving skills. I know this isn't exactly what we were talking about before, but that's just kind of what's coming up right now. But what I'm noticing with some of the athletes that I'm working with is that some of them, they have the skills in like the sound bites that they've heard forever, right? So the one thing that comes to mind is like next play, right? Like next play mentality, or any of those like catchphrasy things that you've heard, but then you dig in a layer deeper, and there's a lot of judgment, like self-judgment, if they can't do that thing, but they don't really understand that thing. They just know that they should be doing that thing, if that kind of makes sense. So I think there's like this very, from my experience and what I'm seeing, is this very surface level understanding. And then when you kind of talk things through, get a layer deeper, and maybe you ask questions about other parts of their life. Like they have the skill, but they're not sure how to apply it to all of the different situations. I feel like I kind of went in a circle there, so I don't know if it made much sense, but like that's kind of what I'm seeing
No, but
currently.
pull at one thread that, and I love where you're going, because I think like what I'm seeing with working with more with high school athletes and then middle school athletes, and again, maybe this is a little bit of a tangent, but what club and travel and all of these sports have become is all about winning, all about the outcome, all about the scholarship or playing at the next level. And I think what is missing is teaching fundamentals and giving kids the skill sets so that they have the building blocks, so that they understand, because you're talking about how do you think? Okay, I don't know what the answer is, but how would I problem solve that? Like,
Yes.
and I can give you an example of a 22-year-old son at college who got a speeding ticket. Okay. Well, he was like, "How do I how do I pay this?" Well, like, you need to look at the ticket, but, like, do you have the skills to
Yeah.
figure out, "How am I gonna solve this problem?" And to your point, I think a lot of them, we've problem solved for them for so long, and then if you look at it from an athletic standpoint, they just get in and they play. They're always part of an organized, with a coach, with a whistle, with a scoreboard, that they're not creatively problem solving on the court, and they're also not doing that because now I need to go to class, and now I need to study for the test, and now we're teaching to the test, we're teaching to the final, we're coaching to the outcome, so that
Yes.
they're not learning how to fall in love with the process and learning how to problem solve, and okay, where does this lead me? What's the next outcome from this?
I my head could fall off of my neck because I'm nodding it so vehemently, agreeing with you all. And I think, initially, and this is goes back to Kirsten when you were playing, and back even before. I mean, I remember when there was a women's athletic department and a men's athletic department, and when the women's athletic department was having to make rub two pennies together and make a dime, and like women athletes were really gritty with what they were given. They were passing their uniforms from one season to the next season to the next season. They didn't have much. My mom was driving the vans to the games. The girls were doing the scoreboard and doing the lines and putting the lines on the floor, because heaven forbid we put lines on the basketball court, men's basketball court, right? So, and then peeling up the tape after every single game, right? So I think part of the changing of some of this, which are all positive changes, right? I'm not advocating for us going back. But I think part of the change of that was both women were really good at problem solving then. They were like, we're going to do this. We're going to do these things. We're going to drive the vans. We're going to do these things. Like even in my day, they were driving the vans to practice and back because the soccer practice were off facility, right? And so the soccer girls were getting band trained and were driving themselves to practice and back. I don't know if they still do that, but there was a level of grit and stick to itiveness that was there. Now, there are all of these amazing resources for them, which I think are great. And I am so glad that they have access to those things. And I want to ensure that we are not doing everything for them. So, my daughter swims 3 nights a week, which is great for her. And if she leaves her goggles in the pool, I am not going back and getting them for her. She is old enough as a 6-year-old, as a 7-year-old, to go back in the pool and get them herself. If she wants to leave practice early, I am not going to tell the coach that she's leaving practice early. I'm not going to make her leave. I'm not going to make her stay if she wants to stay. She's 6. If she wants to leave an hour practice and she's tired and done, great. I'm not going to make her stay. She's 6, right? But I'm going to make her walk over to the coach and say, I'm done for the day. I'm leaving. I'm not going to do that for her. So I think that there are levels of how do we parent, how do we coach to help people cope, right? Because I think even in the college level, there are things that academic advisors are doing that I think cross the line of like, are we tutoring or are we doing their homework? Are we tutoring or are we doing their test prep for them? I think we absolutely want to do writing tutoring for them. And I want us to make sure that they're going to be able to be excellent writers when they get out of college. But that's just, I think that there are lines and we need to make sure and really suss out, are we preparing them after college to be the best members of society as possible, not the best, basketball players that possible or the best whatever possible, because ultimately 99% of collegiate athletes or people who play sports are not going to play professionally. They're going to utilize the skills that they found in sport to become professional, whatever it is that they are going to be professionally.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that goes back into like enjoying the process or falling in love with the process because, success, whatever that looks like, on court, off court, in career, whatever, that's generally a byproduct of what you're doing in the process and those skills that you're creating. I don't have kids, but I was listening to this podcast. The guest was a woman who wrote a book about raising kids. And one thing that she said that has stuck with me since, and I think you can apply it to coaching, to anything, any view that you have on like adolescents, even young adults, is she said that babies are born with all of the emotions and none of the skills.
Yeah.
And it's our job as parents or coaches or however you want to spin it, it's our job to teach them those skills, whatever they may be. And it honestly blew my mind. And I just looked at coaching very, very differently once I heard that, because I think as coaches, I'm not sure as parents because I don't have kids, but but I can imagine as parents maybe, but as coaches, you look at an athlete and they're doing something and you just get so frustrated and it's like, why can't they just do this? And then you just kind of do it for them, right? I can understand that impulse, but like to Camilla, your point of forcing your 6-year-old, 7-year-old to be a self-advocate, that's just like so powerful, and that will serve her much further than, the comfort of kind of solving that problem for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And and to your point, right? It would be easier because she's going to, go very, very slowly and pout the whole way and be like, "Oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to get my goggles." And then it's going to take her 15 minutes. And it would definitely be easier for me to walk in, grab the goggles, and walk back out. Right. But I think we do children and athletes and everyone a disservice if we are not equipping them for the real world. Um, so, I mean, I think it goes into a lot of things that Division I athletics does. And like, you know, I don't know if should we give them a lottery and give them first serve for housing? I don't know. Should we? We could debate that. I think that there's rationale for both ways. But I think that there's a lot of different things in which, like, are we equipping them for the real world? And I think that should be the cornerstone of every decision we make. And if the answer is yes, great, let's do it. If
I
there
think
is a real rationale, great, let's do it.
yeah, we want them to have agency, and we want them to know, to your point, like, you can start teaching it. Parents are like, "What age should I start?" You know? I said, the fact that you know what your college kids' schedule is like, and what they're doing when they're halfway across the country, to me is insane. Like, that you're calling to wake them up every day so they can go to class is insane. Like,
Yeah.
they need to be advocating for themselves and setting, and if they miss class, okay, what are the consequences? But it starts at 6 with that you let them clear their own dishes and take care of their own swim goggles. And then also, like, what I dealt with this morning was a family is very upset with the coach that their child is playing for, is not fair, is playing favorites, and is punitive. And what do we do? Well,
Yeah.
again, this is another example of when the leadership, and if we want psychological safety, we need to decide as a family, is this one of those times where we should pivot? Should we say this is, and the more we talked about it, the mom said, actually, I think he's just afraid of disappointing the dad. It really isn't about the coach, what the coach is saying. He just wants to make sure that he's making his dad happy. And you're
Yeah.
like, okay, which is most of us, right? We just want to make sure that we're making mom and dad happy. And if we're not, I can deal with anything. So what are we doing from and I get this a lot. Parents are like, well, I just want my kid to be gritty and I want them to go for it. And I got a kid that's kind of opting out, or they're playing scared, or they're not really advocating for themselves. They're not really taking risks. And that kind of ties in all of what we've been talking about, which is, how do you keep building that muscle? And the answer is, you need to keep using it. It's
Yeah.
like being in the weight room. If you're not lifting weights, then you're not going to get stronger. And if you're not taking risks, by going up and talking to the coach about how you're feeling, by asking for help if you need it, by disagreeing with your teammates if, we need to come up with a better plan. Like, those are the tools that I think are the biggest wins that you're gonna take long after your sport. Like you said, 94% of C-suite women played sport. It doesn't say that they played D1, it doesn't say they played pro. It says they participated in sports.
Yeah.
What does that give you? That gives you the I can do this. It's okay. My opinion matters.
Yeah.
That's what we want them to know, is I am enough just as I am.
Yeah.
And when you have a coach that says, you can disagree with me. I'm going to allow you the safety to say, I don't agree with you. I'm going to have the final say, but I'm going to allow you to have an opinion. And then, this isn't a democracy that you get to do whatever you want. I'm going to hold the bar high. But most of us really want to know where the bar is,
Yeah.
and are trying to do that.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I love about that advice that you gave and that you talked through is the balancing act, right? That both things can be true. Of We need to suss out, like, is this not an environment for me? Um and or is this something that we can handle and work through? And what truly is the thing that's making me unhappy in this environment? Um because I think one of the things that athletes don't realize and understand is that they have agency. Um, Especially now in the collegiate environment, like, they can go in the transfer portal. If you are truly miserable and you are not happy, you, one, don't have to play a sport anymore. And two, you can transfer. Like, you don't have to do this. And I think far too often people make themselves, their teammates, and their coaches miserable because of what is expected of them or what their perception of is expected of them. And then they go back and they're like, actually, I just think it's what my mom wants me to do. And then their mom is like, I just want you to be happy, kid. I don't care. Like, seriously. We see exceptionally high rates right now between children of 14 and 22 of really high rates of suicidal ideation, really high rates of people who are depressed and anxious. Like, if this is the thing that is making that, this is not worth it. And so, if this is making you unhappy to the extent that it is, you know, making your life unlivable, unhappy, then this is not worth it. And I think that is one thing that we like are missing in the conversation around like developing grit and developing resilience is like it's also a crucial skill in life to learn when to pivot and when to say enough is enough. This is not a safe environment for me. Because there are lots of times in which there are not safe environments in collegiate athletics, whether that be because your coach is homophobic, whether that be because your coach is racist, whether that be because your athletic department is just not a welcoming place, whether that be because you're being bullied. Like there are lots of reasons, or whether that be because you just don't like the sport anymore and it's not for you and you just want to study a lot more and you're not able to because you are spending 40 hours a week playing a sport that you don't love anymore. Like those are all fine things. So I want to put that out there that I do think that it is the right decision sometimes in your life to pivot. And that is also a life skill.
Yeah, and it's okay to do
Right.
that, right? Like you saying enough is okay to say.
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes athletes that I've spoken to, it's like, well, I would be a failure, or all this work would be for nothing, or this is what I've done my whole life. What am I going to do? It's like those are the questions that I hear when it's like maybe it's time to pivot and maybe Kirsten working with like parents and middle school athletes. I wonder if you see sometimes. I'm sure you can sense. Oh, this athlete doesn't really like this anymore. It's like the parents who are really pushing this, or like you can tell that there are external factors that are driving expectations. I mean, I spoke with a high schooler the other day, and she plays multiple sports throughout the year. And she said she was thinking about quitting one of them. And we talked through that. And she said that she just feels like she has to play the sport. It was the only, like one of her parents said, that's the only sport they enjoy watching play. And it's like there are all of these other factors where she said, I actually just don't even like this sport anymore. And it's like, and it's okay to say no. And it's okay to continue to play, but knowing that you made the decision, right? Like you being aware that you made the decision is the most important thing. And also the counterpoint to that, I guess, is because Camilla, you mentioned the transfer portal, and I would love both of your opinions on this of what is the line between this is a bad situation, I need to get out, and I'm not getting the results I want, and I'm not willing to be honest with myself, so I'm just going to try to hop around.
I agree.
Like how do you, I guess for me, I truly believe if you really look inside of yourself and you're the one hitting that pillow at the end of the night, you know what the answer is to that question. But how are you all like talking through? Maybe I don't know if you've come across this, but how would you all talk through that with athletes that you're working with, or what advice would you kind of give?
Yeah, I think you start with yourself, which is being honest with why are you playing? So, what is your why? And I have a client this week who she's really good at volleyball, and so the problem becomes you've have all these sunk costs, right? I put all these years in, and the parents are saying, and they're not wrong, like you're finally to that place where you're going to be really, really good because you've invested so much. And then she's like, and then your identity becomes that. So that's the other thing you start to, and then and I got this after college, right? Like you're done playing, and now who am I that I don't play this sport anymore, right? So, and these kids, when I work with with high schoolers, I'll say, tell me about that time when you first played your sport. And I get now more and more the kids are like, I don't know. Like, what do you mean you don't remember? No, I've just been playing ever since I could walk, so they never really fell in love with their sport. They just, we got signed up for kick and chase at 3 and I've been playing ever since. And not that that's horrible, but it ends up now your identity and who you are becomes intertwined with, I need to do this.
Yes.
And you are not your sport. It is something you do.
Yes.
Making sure you're checking in with yourself when you're assessing, is it pivoting to transfer, or is it pivoting to move on to the next thing? And when I started just brain dumping with my client, like, what are your other passions? Oh, I love to dance. I love art. I would love to be in art. I said, well, what if you're the next Georgia O'Keeffe and you haven't started painting yet? You you got to get to work, right? Well, wait, all I've done is play volleyball. I
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
the Steven Spielberg story, apparently, and I don't even know if it's true, but I love it. I'm going to keep putting it out there. Was that he wrote a thank you letter to his freshman football coach. Thank you so much for cutting me, coach, because it forced me to pick up the camera because I had nothing else to do. Like,
Yeah.
what if you're actually being held back from something that you're really meant to become because well, this is what I've been so far. You're 16, you're 18, you're 22. You have no idea yet who you're going to
Yeah.
become.
Yeah. And that's not to say maybe you will be so blissfully happy somewhere else. And, that's great. That's fabulous. I think one of the really true gifts of being a coach's kid and watching, 30 years of William and Mary volleyball graduates is that I got to see so many people who were exceptionally talented volleyball players then become exceptionally talented other people. Or I got to see mediocre volleyball players become exceptionally talented other people, right? So, there are 30 years of people now that I know that are physicians and artists and, clinicians and archaeologists and doctors and all sorts of fun and unique things that, some of them maybe were great volleyball players. Others were not so great volleyball players, but all of them, came through and got something from being at William and Mary and being a volleyball player. And some of them really, struggled with volleyball, and others of them thrived in volleyball, but it wasn't the end of their story, right? And I think when you are 14, when you are 20, you know, and it's been your whole life and your whole identity, it feels like your whole story, right? So when I was a junior in college, I wrecked my shoulder and my team was depending on me because I was the goalkeeper and I had to stop and it was not my choice. I was taken out finally when my shoulder would not stay in socket and I was determined to stay in and finally my coach and our athletic training staff were like, we're not letting you play anymore because it will just not be good for you for the rest of your life. And it felt like the end of the world to me, right? I was like, I don't care about the rest of my life. And they were like, well, we do. And you're 19, so you don't get to make that choice, right? But if I had been playing at a different school, they would have said, okay, great. This kid doesn't care. Let's keep her in the game, right? Um, and I am eternally grateful for that because now I get to do triathlons and I swim miles and miles and miles. And I get to do that because after they pulled me out, I got a surgery. I then got to redshirt a year and started my master's degree that was paid for by William and Mary. And that was wonderful as well, right? I got all of these opportunities that I didn't have. I had tunnel vision, right? Because you're 19 and all you want to do is serve your team and serve your sport, and it is your whole identity. you don't understand that you have maybe 80 years ahead of you and you need a body, right? And so you have no concept of what the rest of your life could look like. And so I think that that's something we also miss with this conversation is it is your whole identity right now, but maybe your whole identity will be different in 5 years.
Mm. Yeah, and not only would they say, "Oh, she doesn't care, just keep her in," they'd probably say, "Oh, she's so tough." Right? Like that's probably what would come next to it. I'm curious, how did you work through that whole process yourself? Like going from being pulled to surgery to like coming back, like what did that look like
Yeah,
for you?
well, we had a very good sports psychologist, so shout out Deidre Conley. And we had a really good sports athletic department who did a lot of PT, and I had a great surgeon, who were all amazing. And, my team was really, really supportive. And then I felt like, the grandma on our team, because I was about a million years older than everybody else, it felt like on our team when I was in grad school and everybody else felt really young and, when I was on the team. But it felt like, you know, I felt like a renewed sense of, I'm okay. Like I was able to come back. I was able to do it. I was able to do this. And it didn't feel like the end of the world. But it did when, watching my class was exceptionally close. There were 10 of us in our class, which is unusual for anyone, but especially unusual for a team where like the average team size is about 27. So we were a third of the team basically. And on senior day, I didn't get to play. And that felt really horrible, right? It felt like the end of the world. And so, and watching them all graduate and leave without me, that felt awful. I mean, I graduated still, but I was still playing. And so it all felt weird, right? But it ended up being great because I had a new lease on life. I got to play another year and it was, it ended up being wonderful. And if I hadn't have done that, I probably wouldn't have met my wife because then I ended up starting my master's degree at VCU and then, or finishing my master's degree at VCU. And, everything works out like it is. So life is funny the way it is.
Yes, and it's a journey, and we don't have none of us have it all figured out, but
Right.
like discussed here for the last, whatever, 45 minutes, an hour, it's great to have finding places where you can feel the psychological safety, where you can be challenged and pushed and asked to do more than and that's what I think a great coach is. A great coach is someone who sees your potential even when you can't see it in yourself and holds space for you to do that. That doesn't mean I let you coast. That means I'm going to hold you to like I know what you're capable of. And if you're a coach, I believe you should be coaching 1 through 12 or 1 through 22 or however many on the roster, and your weakest link is not necessarily your weakest link athletically, but your weakest link is the one that is not pulling their weight by pushing themselves to their capability. Do your best, be your best, not be the best is the goal.
Mhm.
So, this is great. I love this conversation, and we're going to need to do this again. But maybe we can wrap it up by ending with a question I love to ask everybody, and two athletes. I can't wait to hear your take on it. But how would you finish this, Elsbeth? The best athletes I know do this.
They're adaptable.
Mhm.
I don't know how long of an answer you wanted, if you wanted
You,
just to fill in the blank or
you give me everything you want.
yeah, I would adaptability in all areas. Yeah. That's it. That's all I'll say about it.
And Camilla, you're going to give me more than a word. I know.
I know I talk too much. I was going to say they shake off failure. They're able to shake off failure. Yeah.
Resilient. Yeah,
Yeah.
agree. Adaptable, resilient, and dedicated to their craft. Like really, the saying I say in my house a lot is how we do one thing is how we do everything. So how are you showing up, and how you clean your room, and how you get out of the pool, and how you help at the house, right? Like what are we doing to be a part of the community, and what are we doing to help one another? And we're all a team. It's a team sport, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you both
Definitely.
for making time. I want you to stay warm and not get too pounded with snow. Well, I hate to say it's 80 degrees out here, so
Oh,
hard to
stop.
believe. Living in the same, but this is so much fun, and I so appreciate both of you, and we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
So much fun. Thanks for joining. For those, we had a couple who stayed on the whole way, which is so great. Not
Yeah.
we'll put out to social. We love questions. You can throw us questions if you have specific things, targets you want. We can jump back on and answer any questions you have. But I love helping others figure out what's getting in their way, what's holding them back, releasing those limitations. We all have limitations, and when we name it, we can tame it, and we can move forward and have a great 26. So looking forward to that.
Uh, thank
Let's
you.
do.
Thanks.